We are live, Bobby.
This has been 2 weeks, right? It's been 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, we had 2 weeks without a show.
So 3 weeks.
Yeah, so 3 weeks.
Hmm.
The people were starting to get nervous. I used to do this show with with John from Always Irish. Remember the Always Pigskin show I used to do?
Yeah.
And that one stopped for different reasons. It wasn't it had nothing to do with YouTube or anything like that. But I still get comments to this day. Hey Pete, why aren't you doing that show with John anymore? Which might resume, by the way, for anybody watching, anybody who cares. But anyway, people get nervous. You're like, what did Bobby slap you, or did he disrespect your mother? No, none of that.
Did Bobby join the Taliban?
Yeah.
Can you imagine me in the Middle East? I mean, really, stop and think about that for a second.
I would almost pay to see that, actually. Yeah.
I would either thrive or they'd behead me day one, and it would be it. I would either become the leader of the resurgence or done with me.
Yes.
There's no in between.
I could see that. I would like to see you in a turban. As a matter of fact, for next week's show, can you wear a turban? You have to. Yeah, I don't know where you buy a turban. I guess.
Dude, are you serious? Turbansareus.com. Oh my God! I should do different headdresses week in and week out. So we could do a turban one week. Next week I'd do the whole Amish thing.
Yeah.
And you remember on Seinfeld that time George Costanza bought that Russian hat that was like really big. I could do that when it gets really cold.
We need to contact the accounting department and see if we have enough money in the. I mean, where are you going to buy all these hats from? They could get expensive.
Do we have an accounting department?
You don't want a dime store turban. You want the real deal. That thing's probably expensive. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, they need to be made out of world-class silks.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't want any cheap turban on Bobby. That doesn't work. Clemson Carson's in here. Clemson Girl says, "Hey fellas, hey Clemson Girl." Matt Dummett, what's up? Pete George. Atypical Gump. I'm ready for an awesome and fantastic. It's amazing and fantastic. Not awesome and fantastic, but whatever. Awesome and fantastic works for me too. Luke Walker. He wants to know what he just walked into. Well, your guess is as good as ours. Believe me. Mile High 6 Sports, John Serrain, Crimson Brave, Rack Dog. Thank you all for joining us tonight. So, Bobby, I mean, the honeymoon is over. I think. How long does the honeymoon normally last? Like, so you're married. Did you go on a honeymoon?
I did. How about yourself?
Yeah, we did. We went on a 7-day honeymoon to Mexico. I don't know, it was like 6 months after we got married. We got married in the winter, and then we went on the honeymoon later. So where'd you go?
Caribbean, Key West. Yeah, did the whole cruise thing. She'd never been on a cruise, and I'd been on a bunch of them, and so.
So how long did that last? Like week, 5 days, 4 days?
Yeah. It was a great time. It was a beautiful time, but glorious. So
the honeymoon phase for congratulating the Irish fans is almost over for me. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how much. If it's any nicer and congratulatory to the Irish fans past today, as a matter of fact, past earlier today, I'm going to get sick to my stomach.
Yep.
I mean, I think I've given them all the props and accolades that they deserve. They won the game. Great team. Ian Book played out of his mind. I mean, how much of that was Ian Book and how much of that was Clemson's defense allowing him to run around looking like Lamar Jackson? I don't know. But at this point, the Irish have won their Super Bowl. Their Super Bowl was last Saturday. They don't want to hear this. They don't want to hear this.
The biggest win in the Brian Kelly era. He's come so close several times. A lot of people don't know this, but you and I know the Irish quite well. We'll leave it at that. We don't have a problem with the Irish. We're not like regular Southerners who just hate the Irish. I know a lot about Notre Dame football. That was the biggest win in 10 years for them. 10 years the other night. And they took advantage of what they took advantage. I was on a couple of shows and I talked about this. If you're a good football team, you take advantage of what the other team gives you. And if you don't, shame on you. That's your fault.
Yeah.
Clemson. So I give props to Notre Dame. They did what they did. I've heard about they were missing some players and so on. But let's just be honest with ourselves. We were missing a ton of players on the defense. We have turned over the ball 2 times or 1 time for 2 weeks in a row that has resulted in a touchdown.
Yeah.
To me, the fumble by Amari Rodgers right before the half, where you slowed the frame down to the speed of a snail moving, was ridiculous. If you're a Notre Dame fan, it's a fumble. If you're a Clemson fan, it's no.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, great for Notre Dame, but we played really poor too on certain sides of the ball. DJ on the other side, he threw for. I read a stat the other day, and unless this has been debunked, that's the most yards Notre Dame has ever had thrown against them in the history of their program, and it was a 2-game. It was a second game starter from a true freshman.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you got to give credit. Notre Dame shut ETN down, and
they did do that very well.
That's the key to stopping Clemson's offense, especially with I don't even know what was going on with Ngata. Ngata played the first quarter, and then after the very first catch he had, he was limping, and then they took him out. Zero. I didn't see Frank Ladson all night. Did you? What was going on with him? I don't know.
I know that. I'm pretty sure he's suffering through an injury right now as well.
Yeah, I know, but they made it sound like he was good to go before the game, and then I never saw he never made an appearance.
Yeah.
But DJ played great. I mean, I don't really know. So the question here is, if Trevor Lawrence had been in the game, would that have made a difference in the final score? The answer to that is, I don't know. I mean, statistically, you can't get much better than what DJ did, right? 436 yards or whatever it was, 3 touchdowns total, no interceptions. I mean, he played great. Here's the thing I would say, though. What's one thing you've noticed against Boston? The 2 starts that DJ had, right? The first one against Boston College and the second one against Notre Dame. 2 turnovers, transitioning the ball to Travis Etienne that resulted in an immediate touchdown. Now, is the only thing I can think about that, because Travis Etienne is not one to turn the ball over. He's never been a fumbler, never been somebody to turn the ball over, fumbles, handoffs or anything. There's got to be some sort of a chemistry issue between DJ and Etienne, just not getting enough reps and practice together, the same way that Trevor and Travis have a continuity there. That's the only thing I can think about that. Other than that chemistry between Trevor Lawrence and Etienne, I don't see much of a drop off from the way that DJ played. I think he played a really, statistically, he played better than Ian Book did. But stats don't tell the whole story. I mean, Book impressed me a whole lot. Again, like I said, we had him out there looking like Lamar Jackson or somebody, running around. They couldn't get him on the ground. He's a slippery little sucker. He's a gamer. I have a lot of respect for Ian Book, but here's the $1 million question, because this is all that really matters. Listen, winning the game was great for Notre Dame. All the props to them in the world. What's your goal? Is your goal to beat Clemson in November, or is your goal to beat Clemson most likely in December? Because that's when it's really, really going to matter. And the answer to that is, can Ian Book replicate what he did this past Saturday night again in Charlotte in December? And I'd say, if you look at this history, we have plenty of film on him. He's not a DJ, right? He's not a new guy. When's the last time he's done that? Has he ever done that? Can he do it again?
It's a great question. Guy came out, played great, like you said. He looked like Lamar Jackson. He looked fantastic. Once again, I go back to, I've watched a lot of Notre Dame football. So for any Notre Dame fans or anybody who's like, I'm salty about our loss, I'm a fan of my team. Of course, I'm not happy we lost. What person is happy that their team lost? I mean, do you have piss for brains? Of course, I'm not happy. But with that said, I've watched a lot of Ian Book play football, and that's the best game of his Notre Dame career the other night.
By far.
By far. So, I mean, he took advantage, did it. It's done. It's in the books. Clemson's got an L in the loss column, I mean, or there it is. But when it comes to December, and I said this on a show I was on the other night, I said, you have our full attention. And if we are healthy, and I know ifs and buts and blah, 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 but if we're healthy, you're not going to do what you did the other night to us. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that. You're not going to do that. Going back to the Trevor question, great question. That's really a two-sided coin here with the whole Trevor thing. You look at the numbers of DJ, and you go, I mean, you really can't. I mean, as I said, most yards ever thrown against Notre Dame in the history of their program. Think of every great quarterback they've ever played against, and they played against some great ones in history. Tom Brady. Tom Brady never did that against them. Never did it. He was at Michigan. Never did it. Drew Brees never did it against him. DJ did it the other night. Second start. The only thing that I could step back and say is that maybe Notre Dame said, we know he's really good, but this is only a second start. Let's pin our ears back. Let's go after him. We know their offensive line is suspect. To me, I step back and say, did Notre Dame really shut down Travis Etienne, or did they shut down and really exploit our offensive line? And I think we could lean more towards that in a way, as to where if Trevor was back there, they would go, all right, maybe you might see not as much pressure on him, and they back off a little bit. And guess what would happen? You would see a little more out of Travis. So I don't know. I'm with you. I don't know. I've thought about that a lot.
Offensive line for Clemson's been a problem all year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. And you and I have talked about this all season long and in the preseason, that would be a place that we would either make it or break it, along with our safeties.
Yeah. And I'll say this again. I've said it 100 times. I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over and over again. And I said it before the game, so this is not an excuse. I do not use injuries as an excuse. Don't, because everybody's got injuries right now. You look at Georgia's defense; they got torched by Florida. They've got a bunch of starters out. It's with 2020. It's injuries. It's COVID. It's all kinds of craziness going on across the country. So I don't blame it on that. But I did say before the game that forget Tyler Davis. That's a piece missing. Forget Mike Jones. That's a piece missing. Skalski's the quarterback of the defense. So we had the quarterback of the defense and the offense both out. When I mean quarterback is the leader, basically, play caller. And so I had a feeling that Notre Dame would be able to expose the middle of the field at the linebacker position with their tight ends, which they did in spades. Some of the biggest plays in the game came from Notre Dame tight ends. And give credit to them. I mean, give credit to Ian Book. He made the throws. He made some amazing throws. How many first downs did he run for on third down or second down and long when we had him up against the ropes? So Ian Book played out of his mind, and really he was the difference in the game when it all comes down to it. But what really went wrong in this game? Forget the injuries, forget all that. What really went wrong in this game, despite the turnovers in the first half, Clemson still had the lead in the game with less than 2 minutes left. They get the ball. Notre Dame has 2 timeouts. What transpires during that 2 minutes is the craziest thing I've ever seen since Dabo Swinney's been a head coach. I blame this on the coaching staff. It's easy to blame Travis Etienne for running out of bounds on that play.
Yeah.
The first thing that should have happened before the drive even started during the commercial break when they got the ball back was a huddle on the sidelines and the coaches telling the players, whatever you do, our goal right now is to kill the clock. The clock is working against Notre Dame. They got 2 timeouts. A first down ends the game. That's number 1. Or run the ball 3 times, stay in bounds, make them burn their timeouts. Then they're left with maybe a minute and 10 seconds or maybe a minute, whatever. It depends on how the plays go. And they have to drive the length of the field. Mm-hmm. What transpires is crazy. Offside or a holding penalty. On first down, they throw the ball, stop the clock, and completion. There's one timeout not burned right off the rip. Then they run the ball 2 times. One of them is a holding penalty. That stops the clock. and puts Clemson back 5 yards. Then on the final play of the drive, Travis Etienne, which I don't know what he was thinking, runs out of bounds instead of falling down inbounds. They keep another timeout. Now they have like a minute and 30 seconds. I mean, that whole drive took only 15 seconds. Mm-hmm. Now they have a minute and a half or whatever it is, and 2 timeouts left. That was the difference in the game. I mean, you can go and point, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you can go and point at a million things that you say, if we hadn't fumbled into the end zone and let Clemson get the ball, that would have been 7 points. And you could say the same thing about Clemson with the handoff to Etienne, and they get so there's a million things you can point out during the game from whether you're a fan of either team and say, well, if we would have done this better, we would have won, and we would have done this better, we would have won. But when it all comes down and out of the wash, at the end of the day, Clemson had a lead with less than 2 minutes left and blew it. They blew it. I blame that on Dabo Swinney and the coaching staff. That's who I'm blaming.
I agree with you. And this goes back to the Trevor question. So you're talking about the quarterback, the coach of the offense, the quarterback of the defense. He's a coach on the field. We talk about the importance of leadership. We talk about players who leave the program, and the very next year, you may have all these great players around them, no matter what team it may be, but there's a lack of leadership there. And I wonder if Trevor was on the field the other night, being the third-year starter, most likely the number 1 draft, up until, the whole COVID thing. He was a front runner for the Heisman Trophy. We know Trevor's accolades. If he was on the field, would he have just reminded everybody, hey, guys, stay in bounds? And everybody, and I know there's probably some people would say, I discount that. No, I don't think that would happen. He's the flipping leader of the team. Of course, I could see him saying that, as to where the coaches start to get comfortable with have a world-class player leading their team. And I believe it happens. I believe that you look at your star players so much and start to maybe even relax on your side. I do agree with you, Pete. What happened? I mean, that is a thing of don't go out of bounds. Whatever you do, don't go out of bounds. But I think you can really sum up Clemson's loss the other night. And you even said it with Notre Dame. Fundamental football lost Clemson the game the other night. Poor exchanges.
Yeah. And that's why I say wholeheartedly that the better team won that night.
I'm not
saying Notre Dame's a better team than Clemson, but what I'm saying is that night they were, and they deserved to win. I mean, Clemson did not deserve to win that game. Not after just so many boneheaded mistakes made. Richard Williams, thank you. If Clemson gets and stays healthy, they're the second best team in the country right now. Alabama's a double-digit favorite over all teams. I tend to agree with him that Alabama is definitely looks like the best team right now, and with the fewest flaws. Ohio State's still a little bit of an unknown, because we haven't seen them play anybody with a pulse that's challenged them, and we hear that as Clemson fans all the time. But look, they've played 3 games. How many games of those teams they played won 1 game out of 3 of them? So I don't know, but look, I mean, Ohio State looks good.
Yeah, they look good. Yeah. I mean, they're going to be a playoff team unless something bad happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. Clemson has got to. I've talked about this off and on for really the past 2 seasons, and that is, there is, to me, a lack of hunger on Clemson's football team. For instance, I'll guarantee you the other night when we took the lead after being down by 13 and we took the lead, I'll guarantee you on the sidelines, it may have never been verbalized, but there was the air of, look, we did it again. We did it again. We knew we would wear them down, as we always do to all the teams. Even when they play us really well, we wear them down. I'll guarantee you that was the feeling on the sideline. And you can't blame them, because when you see all the talent around you, you see true freshmen out of high school playing like gods. 3 and 4 year starters are not playing as well as they are. You can't help but to get that into your head that this is how this is going to end. We're going to win the game. And then you blow it. And so I really think that Clemson, I think this game could be the Pittsburgh of the 2016 season. I think this could definitely be the game that wakes us up and says, hey, you have the talent. to win the national championship this year. You have the talent to not lose a game for the rest of the season, including the playoffs and the national championship. But you can't play anything like this anymore for no reason, no matter who you're playing. And that's why I get on my rants and I catch a lot of flack for this one. Oh, well, we played against lesser talent this week. Of course we're not going to show our playbook. Of course we're not going to do this. Of course we're not going to do that. Every game you play, you are setting up basically how you're going to approach the game of football, no matter who you're playing. And that's why I harp on that so much, and I seem like I'm pissed off and in a bad mood about it, is because it's games like this. See, that poor exchange against Boston College that got ran back for a touchdown, did that cost us the game? No. Did it cost us a game against Notre Dame? Abso-flippin-lutely. So it happened 2 weeks in a row. You can't have that happen if you want to win a national championship. Now, I mean, and then here's another thing, Pete, and I know you're seeing this on your board. I'm seeing it on my board. There's a lot of people that's really enjoying this moment for Clemson. That's also the mark that you're a really good football team and that you're incredible. That South Carolina got throttled by a Texas A&M team that I think they're a good team, but they're not a top 10 team. Is that surprising? No. Is it surprising that some of these teams have lost, that Texas has lost some of the games it's lost? No, it's not. It's surprising that Clemson lost in the fashion they lost. So Clemson, you can write this story out from this point. You can right the ship. You can fix the fundamental football problems. But if you don't, kiss your national championship hopes goodbye. Period.
Yep.
And I mean, that's just the message.
Well, the way they're playing right now, I mean, the way they played the past 2 weeks, that's not a national championship team. They have the talent, like you said, but yeah, I mean, it's one. I mean, you have to have the talent and the leadership, and the leadership wasn't on the field that night, but they still held their own. Thank you, Barrick. Got to do better. Meep, mop. Okay. I've seen a couple of questions in here. One question from earlier was, well, let me bring this one up here. One question from earlier was, can Boston College beat Notre Dame? Of course they can. Still picking Notre Dame to win the game. I think they're massively more talented than Boston College is. The only concern I would have if I'm Notre Dame is, having a hangover from the win from Clemson, and then you have to go on the road, across the country to Boston. But other than that, I don't really see an issue there. And I mean, look, Boston College. Notre Dame can still lose to Boston College and still make the ACC championship.
Yeah, they can.
Clemson was huge for them. It pretty much stamped their ticket to Charlotte because of the way the tiebreakers work, the way that I understand it anyway. They hold the tiebreaker over Clemson, and now by proxy, they hold the tiebreaker over Miami because Clemson has a win over Miami, and Notre Dame and Miami don't play each other. So in my mind, I'm pretty sure that Notre Dame can lose one more game in the regular season, as long as they only lose one, and still make it to Charlotte. So as the 1 seed in the ACC.
It's Notre Dame's to lose. It truly is Notre Dame's to lose. Yeah. But what would be hilarious if Boston College did beat them, because it would be such reminiscent of 1993 when they beat Charlie Ward and the #1 Florida State Seminoles in 1993, and then the very next week in South Bend lost to Boston College. And if anybody who's paying attention, that happened on a field goal, by the way. That kept Notre Dame from winning the national championship that year.
Yeah, it did. This is a good question, Rack Dog. How come the ACC don't have divisions? Well, the ACC doesn't have divisions this year because there's an odd number of teams. By allowing Notre Dame to come in for one season, that takes a 14-team conference to a 15-team conference, and you can't have one division with more teams than the other, basically. So they're doing like the Big 12. Which I'm not going to even go down this rabbit hole. You know what I'm about to say, don't you, Bobby? I don't like divisions in the first place. Whole nother discussion for a whole nother night. We'll be here for 3 hours, and I have strong opinions on that. I think I have several videos on it too, and I'll talk about it in the future. But to answer your question, is this year is because Notre Dame's in there, and that's why.
You know what's so funny about you and I? That there is topics that you get really fired up about. I'm like, okay. And then there's stuff that I'm over here about to have a heart attack. And you're like, man, You okay over there?
Yeah.
Rough week at work.
Yeah,
Rough week at work. Yeah, we are.
Anybody who's crazy enough to start a YouTube channel based around college football already has problems in their head. I mean, your mental case basically is what I'm trying to say in a nice way. So
you have to be.
We're both mental cases. Thank you, James. Pete and Bobby, great show as always. We appreciate
Thank you, buddy.
Rack Dog's still trying to get me worked up here. But as I told John from Always Irish when we did a show again last week before the game, I said I would rather, and I asked him this. I was looking at it from a Notre Dame perspective, not even a Clemson perspective, but now I'm on the receiving end of this.
Yeah.
I said, John, would you rather? Because he was going on and on about how Notre Dame has to win this game for the confidence of the team to even be able to fathom winning the ACC championship.
And I could get that.
Because of the history with Brian Kelly, because of the history of not beating top 5 teams. And I mean, well, last time they beat a number 1 team was 27 years ago, right? 1993. And so I get all that. I said, but all right. I said, but take all of that out of it, John. I said, take all of that out of it and tell me, look at the rest of the season. You can still lose this game against Clemson and still conceivably meet them in Charlotte and win the ACC. Would you rather win this week or would you rather win the ACC if you had to choose between the two? And his answer shocked me. His answer was, I'd rather win this weekend because they're so starving for that big win over a marquee, top team that they just want to get the monkey off their back. Mm-hmm. For me, being where Clemson's been in the past 6-7 years, right? We've seen this story before, right? A bunch of loss against Syracuse, like you said, a loss against Pitt. I'd rather win the ACC with 1 loss and get to and stamp my way to the playoffs than worry about some meaningless regular season game. It's not completely meaningless from a historical standpoint, I guess, but from just a numbers standpoint, as far as the way the season plays out, I would rather win the one in Charlotte. And I also said, and this is probably more important than anything, I said, if I'm guaranteed to only win one of those, I feel better about being the team that lost the first game. It's hard to beat any team, especially a team as good as Notre Dame or a team as good as Clemson.
Yeah.
Twice in 1 year is extremely difficult. When's the last time somebody beat Clemson twice in the same season?
Can't think of it.
No.
Can't think of it. When was the last time someone beat Alabama twice in a season?
Right.
When was the last time somebody beat Ohio State twice in this season? That's the idea.
It's pretty seldom that 2 teams play each other in the same season. We saw it in the SEC.
Yeah.
Right? Because with Georgia the other year, they played Auburn twice because they played them in the regular season and then in the SEC championship game. I guess the only other one you could think about that would be the Big 12 on a regular basis because they do the round robin and then they have a rematch most likely. Or they do have a rematch every year in the Big 12 championship. They've only been doing the Big 12 championship for like 3 years now. So I guess it's not a very likely thing to happen anyway. But the bottom line is it's hard to beat anybody twice in a row, especially a team like Clemson. So again, if they meet in Charlotte, I mean, who knows what? Here's the other part of this. Who knows what the landscape of college football is going to look like in this, 6 weeks from now? With coronavirus, we're already seeing this. I mean, the Pac-12 is having a hell of a time with this. The Big Ten, a couple of teams in there having a big time with this. Who knows who's going to be out on what team in December? Provided that these 2 teams that we think are going to meet up on December 19th do. Who knows what the team? Ian Book going to be out? Travis Etienne might be out. Who knows who'll be out? So it's I'm not putting the cart before the horse. But I would much rather be the team that lost a close game in double overtime in November going into the game. I think Clemson would be favored by at least a touchdown, 6 or 7 points, if everything's the same.
If a team has to lose, only to be most likely the favorite to win the conference championship. And I say that's not because we lost the other night. If we would have won the other night, I would be concerned about Charlotte. I would, because we know most likely it would have been Notre Dame. We would play. I would be concerned about that game, and that's me being transparent. Now, I believe that Notre Dame, not to say they didn't have our attention the other night. Maybe that verbiage and that setup is wrong, but please understand what I'm saying here. You have our full attention in Charlotte. There is nothing that we will not pull out to beat you in Charlotte, and I believe that. I mean, if Sweeney has to dance naked on the side to win that game, he's doing it.
Well, certain teams, they get worse after a loss. The great teams get better after a loss. And that's all coaching. And I think that we already know where Clemson stands as far as that concerns. Big Vol Daddy, BVD's in the house, says, listen up, Bammers, I think he's saying. It's hard to beat a team 15 years in a row. You keep that in your head next to your bitches.
He never disappoints.
I mean, see, here's the thing. Like, nobody's feeling sorry for Clemson for losing one game in the past 3 years in the regular season. Meanwhile, BBD's sitting over here talking about going on 15 years not beating their rival. Man, that is.
I will have to, and I'm not talking trash here, BBD. I actually like Tennessee. I don't like Alabama. I respect them, but I don't like Alabama. Say what?
By the way, the Clemson orange behind you right now on that flag, I don't know if it's my computer screen or maybe it's the YouTube. It looks Tennessee-ish.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It really does. Now I've got two really bright lights right here in front of me, two of them.
Whatever you just did, now it looks dark orange. Now it looks more Clemson orange.
When I raise my hands like Moses.
Yeah, right there.
See, I think what it is this stupid. It's this stupid bath thing. Yeah. I'm gonna sit like this the entire time.
Yeah.
That's not weird. No, I will say this about Tennessee football. Of course, my brother-in-law graduated Tennessee. I have a lot of respect for Tennessee. I like the Knoxville, Smoky Mountain area. I love it. I could easily live there. I'm truly surprised that Tennessee is doing as poorly as they are. I really am. I'm shocked. I just don't. I know losing games to like Bama. Okay, it happens. It happens. I just don't get what's going on up there, and it just kind of bothers me. But hey, man, I remember when Tennessee won the national championship. I remember the Peyton Manning years. I even remember a few good years after that. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Bobby, please don't take off the bathrobe. No, yes, please don't. I don't want to know what's under there.
Am I wearing pants? Am I wearing underwear?
Positive for COVID-19. Well, first of all, who said that? Gators fan, Panama City Beach said that. If I know what I know about George, which is very little, but probably too much still, if he got COVID-19, he'd be in the high risk category. So I don't think he has it.
The little bit that I know about George, I think testing positive for COVID-19 would be the least of his worries of testing positive for anything.
King by default says, I think it will be Clemson versus Ohio State Rose Bowl, Alabama versus Oregon Sugar Bowl. So that's a good time to talk about the possible playoff picture and the ramifications of Notre Dame winning this weekend. Notre Dame winning this weekend could have ruined a bunch of seasons, including Miami. Obviously, that's the most notable one. But as far as playoff is concerned, you have Texas A&M sitting there with one loss. Their only loss being in Alabama. I think their game this weekend got postponed. Right? Weren't they playing Tennessee this weekend? Anyway,
I think so.
If Texas A&M finishes the season with only one loss, they would be considered for the playoff heavily. I mean, especially with their only loss being Alabama, right?
Yeah.
They have a win over Florida, which was a top 5 win at the time and still a top 10 win in the polls now. But here's the thing. With Notre Dame winning, this opens up the door for 2 ACC teams to get in with Notre Dame being in the ACC. And this completely hinges on if Clemson – now, obviously, if Notre Dame wins the ACC championship and they go undefeated, they're in. And Clemson's out. Clemson will have 2 games. They wouldn't be a conference champ. They're gone. But if Clemson wins the game You have a one-loss ACC Clemson champ who beat Notre Dame, who Notre Dame's going to be top 10 team at the least, top 5 team maybe, if they went out. Notre Dame's only loss being to Clemson, who was number 1 at the time. I think both of those teams would get in. I think it would.
I agree.
Yeah. And so that would leave somebody like A&M on the outside looking in, or who knows what's going to happen in some of these other conferences, right? If you're Oregon and you have one loss or you're undefeated, who do you put in over A? I mean, the A&M debate with them would be good. The A&M debate with Notre Dame or whoever loses the ACC championship would be good. So there's a bunch of different things that can happen. And a lot of these scenarios would not even be happening had Clemson won this week. So it's opened the door up for a lot more controversy coming down the line.
I think that the Notre Dame Clemson scenario, especially let's say Clemson Notre Dame meets up in the ACC championship, it's another thriller. Clemson wins the ball game. Alabama goes in. SEC this year is way different than what it's been, even in the past few years. And we've seen when I say a decline with the SEC, all the SECers starts chanting SEC really loud and starts spouting out stats. Please stop doing that. I mean, let's just come back down to reality here. SEC is not as good this year as it has been in the past, period. It hasn't. You can blame it on whatever you want to blame it on, but the season is the season. Georgia, for injuries and everything, they got spanked, got their second loss.
Georgia has a very noticeable problem.
Exactly.
They don't have the same sort of hidden problem. And I had this conversation with the other day. It might have been Mark Rogers. I was like, if you just look at some of these teams across the country that normally, even recently, but traditionally and recently have dominant defenses across the country. Michigan. I mean, Michigan's under Harbaugh has been terrible on offense, and they've been surviving on having a top 5 defense since he's been there. Yeah. Ohio State's another one. Clemson's another one. Florida's another one. Alabama, LSU. I mean, just go down the line, and all these teams, their defenses are questionable this year. All of them. Ohio
Every one of them
struggling. Michigan's defense looks awful. Clemson's is, I mean, obviously has its problems. Florida's getting scored on hell, the backup of the backup of the backup of the backup of the water boy scored 28 points on them this weekend. Florida gave up a bunch of, Alabama gave up. So my point is, what's the deal with the defenses? Is this something to do with COVID and restrictions on the camps in the fall with the hitting? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to it, but it's mind boggling.
I don't know. I do know this, that the SEC is Bama and everybody else. There's other years, obviously last year LSU won it, blah, blah, blah. But this year it's Bama, drop off, and everybody else. So we know Bama's getting in unless something bad happens to them. And the Pac-12, I'll believe the Pac-12. I have pulled for the Pac-12 in the past. I've liked sitting and watching their games. I mean, heck, you can go to sleep and wake up 1 o'clock in the morning and Pac-12 game's still on. And I'm not joking. I've actually got up and in the middle of the night, took a leak, grabbed me something to drink, sit down and went, hey, Oregon's still playing, and sit down and watch them. Y'all think I'm being funny, but I mean that. I've actually done that and finished the game. But I have no bad feelings towards the Pac-12. It's just the Pac-12 has done what the Pac-12 has done for a very, very long time. And except for when Southern Cal was really relevant and those few years that Oregon was relevant. So I'll believe it when the Pac-12 does it. The Big 12, they're done. So we really see Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame. That is very possible. That is a very possible scenario.
There's still a lot of different scenarios, though.
Oh, I mean, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, if Cincinnati runs the table and they continue to play strong ball, is it easy to tell them no?
Well, there you go. That's going to be the debate this year. I don't think there's a path for Cincinnati to get in there. It's not their fault. They really might be one of the best 4 or 5 teams in the country. Nobody's ever going to find out, though. Sure. Because they don't play a single Power 5 team on their schedule. And it's hard enough for the group of 5 teams to get in there, even when they play a couple of Power 5 teams a year. I just don't see it happening this year. What are you going to tell Cincinnati they can get in there over a one-loss A&M with A&M schedule compared to Cincinnati's schedule?
Sure. You're right. I mean, you tell A&M, if A&M can hang on and win the rest of their games, you had to go to Tuscaloosa.
And by the way, Cincinnati's great. Give them all the props they want. If they played anybody, I don't have the top 10 in front of me, but I know about what it is. Anybody in that top 10 would be favored over Cincinnati tomorrow. Anybody. By a lot, too. And for good reason. Cincinnati last year went undefeated, except for one team. You know who they played?
Who?
Ohio State. You know what the score was?
A lot to a little.
40-something to nothing. 43-0, I think.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Yeah. So. But then again, you step back and you look at Cincinnati. Devil's advocate here. You look at a team who's grasping at straws for talent, but they're doing what they're doing. Of course, we should not give them an entrance into the college football playoff because we feel sorry for them. I think that if I was on that team, I wouldn't want that. I'd want it because I earned it. But, I mean, that really testifies to the fantastic coaching that's going on up there and the player development.
Yeah. Gators fan, Pamela Beach City. I don't know if this guy's drunk already. What time is it? 9:40. You already drunk? It's 9:45. Oh, I guess that's not too early. Whatever. Florida State beating Clemson because they suck. Maddie Sims. This is a good point here. I think Notre Dame is more likely to get a playoff shot over Oregon, in my opinion, because I see Oregon taking one of those random bad losses. Well, I would tend to agree with you there, except for the fact that I look at Oregon's schedule. And this has been another story, Bobby, with doing these conference-only schedulings in a short year, and every conference is different, right? The ACC and the ACC has the most, right? 11 in the regular season. Of course, one of them's a crap cupcake game. SEC 10, Big Ten 9. And then the Pac-12 is only playing 8, right?
Yeah.
So it could end up hurting Oregon that they're only playing 8. Mm-hmm. But the thing that these conferences have done, if you've noticed, particularly in the Big Ten and the Pac-12, because they're playing less than everybody else is. When they made the schedules, they definitely favored certain teams, and there's nothing wrong with that. First of all, I think it's a brilliant strategy. So I'm not hating on the conference for doing this, but have you seen Ohio State's? Ohio State is the best team in the Big Ten. We all know that. They probably have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. Have you seen it? They're big. They're hard. The toughest team they play this year might be this weekend against Maryland.
Did they play Northwestern?
I don't know. They play whoever. All the bad teams in the Big Ten. I mean, should I pull it up?
Please do. I'd like to sense Maddie. I agree with you because I'm out of the. I like teams. I'm one of those guys. Obviously, Clemson is my team. Clemson is my team. Love the guys. Been pulling for them since I can barely remember. But there's teams you like. Some people they're totally like, no, I don't do this. But me, I like certain teams in different areas. I actually like Notre Dame. I have no problem with Notre Dame whatsoever. I've liked Notre Dame for years. So that's why I know a lot about Notre Dame. I actually like Oregon. I felt like Oregon or Utah really stood a chance to make the playoffs last year, and they both wet the bed. So we saw what happened there.
So here's Ohio State's remaining schedule. Now, again, this is not Ohio State's fault. I'm not blaming them. I'm not making fun of their schedule. I'm not doing it. I'm just saying, just look at what it is. Okay. They play Maryland this week. Maryland got blown out by 40 points by Northwestern, but they've won a couple games in a row, including last week against Michigan. Then they play Indiana. Indiana's, they're undefeated, so maybe that's the toughest team they play left on their schedule. I don't know, but Indiana's still Indiana is somebody going to try to convince me that Indiana went from Indiana to all of a sudden a top 5 team over a one season? No, you're not convincing me of that. Ohio State will probably beat them by 40. Then they play Illinois, which is the worst team statistically and probably talent-wise as well in the Big Ten at this point. Then they play Michigan State, who's in shambles. Michigan State won't be relevant again for at least 5 years.
What happened? Just pause there for a second, just for me. 10 seconds, I swear.
If you're going to ask me why?
You beat Michigan. Your our South Carolina, you beat them. And then this past week, You lost by 42 points to Iowa, a team that clips in 28 points is like a big deal. I mean, come on, man.
But this is a referendum on Michigan, not Michigan State. Michigan State's terrible, and so we thought Michigan was going to be good, but they might just be just as bad as Michigan State. Obviously, they lost to them. And then after Michigan State, their last game is Michigan, which is another dumpster fire team. And again, this is not Ohio State's fault. Michigan was supposed to be a top 10 team. I'm trying to look who else on the schedule that was supposed to. Penn State, who they just beat. That they were supposed to be a top 10 team. They're bad.
They're horrible.
Nebraska week 1. They're not looking good. Of course, they've not looked good for a while. But my point here is, I don't see anybody on Ohio State's schedule that they're losing to, and I also don't see anybody on Ohio State's schedule the entire season that would be a better win than anything Clemson's had. Do you see anything better on there than Miami, or if Clemson wins the ACC championship against Notre Dame? No, nothing.
Nothing.
Most of these teams on the schedule, if not all of them, will be unranked by the end of the season, unfortunately, except for maybe Indiana.
Yep.
Can finish the season ranked. I don't know.
Yep.
We'll see.
And this is another odd year for Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern. You and I've talked about him. I like Pat Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
It's very, we always talk about it's difficult to get into Georgia Tech. In the ACC, you always hear about that. One of the reasons it's difficult to get into Georgia Tech is not only academically, because we have Duke, we have Virginia, we have UNC, which are very, very incredible academic institutes. But it's because Georgia Tech offers very limited majors. You look at Northwestern. Northwestern is a really, really difficult school to get into. So, 1 year, Northwestern looks really, really good. The very next year, just like last year was a horrible year for Northwestern. This year, 3-0. You talked about it. They drilled that one team. I can't remember who you referenced just a second ago. This looks like this might be another good year for Pat Fitzgerald. Don't think they'll beat Ohio State if they get into a conference championship, but it's just really, really odd landscape with, I would say Northwestern would be one of those difficult teams to call what their season would be like year in and year out.
Yeah.
Because no matter how much talent you have, you either blow it or you're really, really solid.
They're like a lot of teams in the ACC, right? Like they can have a good season where they win 10 games and surprise everybody, but that's not the standard at Northwestern. Let's just be honest here. I mean,
yeah, it's almost like a Wake Forest when Wake Forest is good.
Michael says, Pete, you need to watch Indiana. They're good. I have watched them. Hell, I got them ranked in my top 10, in my own personal top 10. I know they're good. I'm not saying they're not.
No.
Seen a lot of stuff about the playoffs. It's just going to be the most interesting thing about the playoffs. The playoffs are always interesting because there's always going to be, when you have a 4-team playoff, or even if you had an 8 or a 6 or whatever, there's always that one team or two teams that feel like they're worthy of that 4th spot that got left out. And there's an argument for that. And this year, with the different schedules, the conference onlys, all the different players that are missing and teams that are missing games and postponing games and coronavirus. I mean, it's just, can you imagine the debate that's going to go on this year as far as who deserves to be there? And because how do you really gauge if there's 0 teams playing interconference games in the Power 5? We have nothing we can't gauge the middle of the road ACC team versus the middle of the road Big Ten team because they're not playing. And you multiply that times 1,000,000 with all the different scenarios, all the conferences. How do you really know who's the best when you're only playing in your own conference? I think that term, the eye test, that everybody hears and hates that term, like wins have to matter. Forget the eye test, right? It's all about who deserves to be there. But you're going to rely on the eye test this year if you're a committee person more than any other year, because what else do you have to go by? You have to go by their record and how they look. That's it.
Well, that's the reason they're on the committee and I'm not.
I don't want you on the committee.
I know. Though I would show up in this bathrobe and it would be amazing. Could you imagine me walking in there? I'd have like ankle socks on.
You know what? You want to know what the sad thing is? I can't imagine you walking in there with the robe on.
You know that's the difference with
Hefner.
yes I have. This is like the exchange between Trevor to ETN versus DJ to ETN. We know what's coming.
It is kind of alarming. Everyone's just waiting for you to stand up and open that thing up and flash everybody.
Oh my God!
Click the end broadcast button so fast if that happened.
It set a world record speed. A world record speed. Yeah.
America's fumble.
No, I mean, here's the deal for the committee. I think this year could end up easier than others if they don't try to overthink it. Alabama, I mean, at this point, I mean, this is, November the 10th. Alabama, unless something crazy happens. Ohio State, unless something crazy happens. Clemson, they win the ACC championship. And according to the fashion, they win it. If it's a close game, really close, I'm talking about within 7 points, hard-fought game, looks really, really good, you've got Notre Dame in it. If Clemson wins and they beat Notre Dame by, say, 10 to 14 points, and nobody is blown away by Notre Dame's performance, I mean, at that point, you open up the same scenario we've been dealing with for, basically since the playoff really kicked off. Yeah. You have 3 solidified teams, and then a bunch of, oh, please put me in the fourth. Please put me in the fourth. Please, for the love of God, here's $20. Will you put me? Date my daughter. I mean, it's same scenario again. The whole COVID thing going on. We see what it's done to college football. We see what it's done to college football. You and I don't like to even talk. I don't even like to talk about it, y'all. I'll be honest with you. I don't even like to talk about it anymore. But it has affected college football. We are at the point now. We're in flipping November. For those of you who's lost count, in a couple of weeks, it'll be Thanksgiving. So we have successfully made it much farther into the college football season than I thought we would make it into.
Sure.
So I believe we're going to have a college football playoff. I believe it's going to be fruitful. I believe it will actually crown a champion as long as, that's worthwhile, unless something really stupid happens. But I really believe that at this point, other than the oddness and everything we're all been dealing with, we're really in the same scenario we're in every year.
Right. And that's
3 solid teams and a 4th spot that everybody's like, put me in it.
The biggest question has been whoever wins the national championship this year, no matter who it is, would it be legit or would it have an asterisk by it because of the year? I'm almost to the point now where I'm like, if you look at all of the hurdles that every program has to, go over just to even have the season and go off without a hitch, or at least be able to play the majority of the games, it's almost harder to win a national championship this year than other years. So I'd almost respect them more. Michael Hogg wants to know, Bobby, how can I find your YouTube channel? Let me take you.
Well,
let me show him. I'm gonna let him learn today. Right here. The name underneath his picture here, Bobby Durkins. That's the name of his YouTube channel. So just go into YouTube search bar and type Bobby Durkins, and you're only Bobby Durkins on YouTube, right?
Only on YouTube.
Right.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Okay. But yeah. And I will go ahead and tell you, my friend, though I kind of favor myself, I talk nothing. Well, some people says I do, but anyway,
hey, I'll take over from here. Hey, just do yourself a favor and go watch Bobby Durkins.
I would thank you, buddy.
Because thank you. What you're seeing here, I promise you. Jake Short says, can we talk about Trevor playing in that Notre Dame game? How would that impact the defense, allowing ETN to do better? Well, Jake, first of all, thank you for showing up. I don't know if I've seen you here before, but we did spend probably the first 20 minutes or 15 or 20 minutes of the show talking about that very subject. So we're not going to go over it again, but once the stream ends, it might take 15 or 20 minutes. This video will upload to YouTube, and you can go back and watch it from the beginning. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Yes, BC says Bobby Durkins is a great character, and The truer words have never been spoken. I'm running out of time, Bobby.
Me too.
I mean, I know you have nothing but time.
You know me, man. I'm just laying around in my bathrobe.
Right. Yeah. That's what I need to do. Go get in my bathrobe. Thank you.
You know, I'd never owned a bathrobe until my wife got this one for me for Christmas. And I am telling you.
And now you can't take it off, apparently.
No. I go to the grocery store in this thing. I've been to funerals. I actually christened a baby in this thing.
Yeah. Guys, he's not lying about this. This is the funny part about it is he's not making that up, any of it.
Yeah, this is great. This is great.
Anyway, so here's let's do a brief synopsis of tonight. Notre Dame, congratulations on the win. You'll be happy and keep celebrating for at least whatever. Well, when's December 19th compared to now? 6 weeks away?
Something roughly like that.
For the next 6 weeks. Believe me, you'll need it. Because things are going to change that day. What else do we want to talk about? Oh yeah, the win by Notre Dame this weekend greatly changes the landscape, possibly of the fourth team that gets in the playoffs. For all the ACC haters out there, there's 2 ACC teams ranked in the top 4 right now.
Oh, but there's always an excuse, Pete. There's always an excuse. Yeah. You know, Notre Dame's really not an ACC team.
Well, Clemson.
But they are right now. But yeah.
They should be in. They should have dropped from 1 to 8. That's somebody told me that today. They should be ranked in maybe the top 18.
and who does that person pull for? They probably pull for a team who's not barely in the top 25.
The person pulled for Notre Dame, which I thought was even more funny. But anyway.
Oh my God, that's great. You go win one game, and all of a sudden you're screaming stuff about the 4 horsemen.
You stormed the field for beating a top 18 team. Congratulations. All right. All right, guys, but seriously, thank you. We've been on hiatus for the past couple of weeks, and so we were happy to get back with you. We hope you enjoyed the show. Everyone go check out Bobby Durkins on his YouTube channel. Anything exciting going on over there other than just the normal Bobby Durkins?
Just a regular stupidity, you know.
That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
I can't speak for everybody, but, you know.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Pigskin Pete, where can we find you, my friend? I never get to ask that question.
Where can't you find me? I mean, I'm all over the place. I'm like I'm a journeyman on YouTube. You can find me over on Uncle Lou's channel every Tuesday and Thursday at noon for the Lunch Money Show. Mm-hmm. You can find me here Tuesdays at 9 p.m. You can find me every Wednesday and Friday night here at 10 p.m. for a call-in show where I get to have people call in and tell me how stupid I am and how much my show sucks.
And then if you catch him on a Saturday night down in Atlanta, he's dancing around shaking what puts a smile on his wife's face every Saturday night.
Right. Thank you all for all the kind comments. Luke Walsh says he's been missing the show. Notre Dame 88 says great show, guys. Thank you. We love all of you. If it weren't for you guys, we would not be doing this. Believe me. I mean, we can get together and just talk amongst ourselves any time of the day. And it's not near as exciting as it is talking with you. Well, maybe sometimes it is. Depends on what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Seriously, though, thank you all. And we will see you next week at 9 p.m. Have a great day. Pigskin Pete and Bobby Durkins are checking